Good day, students. I am your teacher for this week. Our learning competency for this week is proves theorems on the different kinds of parallelogram, rectangle, rhombus, and square. But before we start, I want to ask questions that are timely and relevant at this moment. Are you willing to be vaccinated against COVID-19? How can we prove the efficacy and effectiveness of these vaccines? Then later, I'll give you a guide on how to answer these questions. So let's start. We have three special parallelograms: rectangle, rhombus, and square. Definition of rectangle muna tayo. A rectangle is a parallelogram with four right angles. We also have theorems on rectangle. Theorem number 1. If a parallelogram has one right angle, then it has four right angles, and that parallelogram is a rectangle. Theorem number 2. The diagonals of a rectangle are congruent. When we say congruent, it basically means equal. This is the symbol of congruent. Next one is rhombus. It is a parallelogram with four congruent sides. Theorem number 1. The diagonals of a rhombus are perpendicular. When we say perpendicular, two lines intersecting each other at 90 degrees or at right angle. Theorem number 2. Each diagonal of a rhombus bisects opposite angles. When we say bisect, to divide it into two equal parts. Last but not the least, definition of a square. It is a parallelogram with four congruent sides and four right angles. A square is both a rectangle and a rhombus. Theorem number 1. The diagonals of a square are congruent, perpendicular to each other, and bisect the four angles of a square. We started our lesson by asking these questions. Are you willing to be vaccinated against COVID-19? And how can we prove the efficacy and effectiveness of these vaccines? My dear students, we can prove the efficacy and effectiveness of these vaccines by searching and reading its data that is backed or supported by science, and thus we can decide if we want to be vaccinated or not. So as your teacher, I will take the shots as recommended. For our activity 1, put a check mark in the table if the property is a property of a special parallelogram. First property, if one angle is right, then all angles are right. It is, yes, rectangle and square. How about opposite sides are equal? Correct, rectangle, rhombus, and square. Last, its four angles are 90 degrees in measure. Rectangle and square. Tama ulit. Next part, complete each statement with always, sometimes, or never. Triangle is always, sometimes, or never, a parallelogram. Tama. Never na never. Because? Because never magiging four sides ang triangle. Next, rectangle blank has four sides. The answer is always. Tama. Because? Because laging apat ang sides nito. Thank you for watching and learning with me. You may now proceed to our next virtual instruction.